It's Signum Academy on Twitch. It must be because it's the first Monday in May. Happy May, and welcome to our stream, quote unquote, uh, of Undertale. I'm Wesley, and if you haven't seen this portion of Signum Academy or Signum's presence on Twitch before, welcome. It's a little different than some of the other stuff that we do. Basically, I will be showing you some playthrough of the indie darling Undertale, and we'll be talking about it as we go along. The intent here is normally to connect things back to Middle-earth and the works of J.R.R. Tolkien. Today, in the spirit of a beautiful new spring and in the kind of renaissance of Signum Academy's presence, we're going to just jump ahead a little bit and see how Undertale connects back to EarthBound, more so than to that Tolkien material. And I'm going to actually go away so that we can see better what's happening on screen. With this game, it's actually more important, I think, to see some of the action. Um, and I'll talk about that a little bit as we go. Um, Here I'm gonna see about this one and this one, and then we'll see how things are looking. If you've got comments and questions, put them in the chat. I'll try to check that. Yes, we saw this beginning already. Don't go too far. As usual, trying to walk a fine line between giving away spoilers and showing enough of the game to talk about. So we get a kind of title card here for Undertale by Toby Fox. The walkthrough, as it says, includes a number of different outcomes. So we're just gonna start with the first. We're walking through a forest. Now that branch where you stepped on, it didn't break, but then it broke a little bit later. Someone else stepped on it. There's a shadowy figure behind our protagonist. And the shadowy figure approaching our protagonist, walking up from behind. The old whoopee cushion in the hand trick. It's always funny. Sans the skeleton. He speaks in Comic Sans font. He's grinning. He has a brother named Papyrus. Just here. Turns out that we're exactly the same shape as a lamp. Papyrus speaking all caps, Papyrus font. He's pretty interested in puzzles. Whereas Comic Sans, ooh, my ad block has been updated. That's exciting. Sorry about that. Comic Sans doesn't take anything too seriously. Respect, recognition. I will finally be able to join the Royal Guard, Papyrus is shouting. And he might even make a friend. All you do is sit and boondoggle. And of course, Sans is pointing out exactly where the human is. Makes a skeleton joke. Working yourself to the bone gag. Ah. Alright, and Papyrus has had enough. He departs with a backbone joke of his own. And one last hit. Alright, sorry. There's a setup there for a joke that we're going to get later. The first part of this game has us in a pretty generic setting of the underground caves. There's some sort of ruins there, as if people once lived there, but they seem to have departed. There's just monsters and ghosts, but not the kind that really interact a whole lot with our character, with the exception of Toriel and her house, of course. Then, having proceeded past that tutorial opening section of Undertale, the next area that we come to is this dark woods, the dark forest. And it's snowy here, and there's a lot of dialogue all of a sudden. There's two sort of major characters introduced back to back, Sans and Papyrus. And initially, Sans is pretty menacing. He's this dark shadow. Can't quite see what he is. He is a skeleton after all, so there's something a little bit eerie about him, even once we see him clearly. But he's so goofy and seemingly harmless that, as his name implies, he seems to be there just for comic relief. His brother is the kind of Don Quixote to his Sancho Panza, right? You've got the tall, skinny, serious one, Papyrus, and the short, more jolly, uh, more realistic Sancho Panza represented in Sans. Now, the dark wood might also be a kind of a reference to the sort of place where kids go camping and then scary things happen to them in movies and shows. It could be a reference even to another work of literature, even older than Don Quixote, to the Divine Comedy of Dante, which opens famously with the pilgrim having lost his way in a dark wood. Um, he meets some interesting people there, and then he too goes to the underworld at that point, which is sort of a thing in old epic stories and poems. So we've got a lot of potentially relevant things to our Tolkien material here. But like I said, in terms of the snow, we're actually going to focus on the EarthBound connection this time around. So nothing too mythological really, but in EarthBound, like in many video games, there's got to be a segment where we are traversing a snowy region. Um, Games really like to represent all different possible biomes, regions, weather types, and climate types. And so it's almost required that at some point you'll have a wintry, snowy area. At some point you'll ride a mine cart through a cave area, right? You'll have your basic forest area, most likely. So there's all sorts of stuff like that. Um, there's a little bit of inventory management that we get to do at this point. If you want to put an item away or take an item out so that your inventory can be a little more useful. There's a silly fishing mini game, and the whole calling on the phone thing um, is, if not the very first game that has that, then one of the first. It's a reference to EarthBound, where you've got to call back home on the phone to avoid homesickness, and you got to call your dad on the phone to save the game. Um, is that a human? So now you're the scary one. Oh my God. Is that a human? Yes. Oh my God, Sans, I finally did it. And so we hear about another character there, Undyne. Um, but this obsession that Papyrus has with status, um, in contrast again to his brother Sans, who couldn't really care less, uh, makes him at least as funny. All right. And it's very dialogue heavy. You notice there's a lot of stage business here, a lot of gags, a lot of jokes, puns galore. That too, Tony Fox, Toby Fox takes from EarthBound in large part. Um, I've mentioned before, but the fact of this game being made by just one person is not entirely accurate. Um, there was a certain amount of contributions from others, particularly when we get to the uh, later segments of the game. Some of the pretty impressive battle sequences have some aid from someone who's named for a character from EarthBound, Everdread. Well, he spells it a little weird. All right, so you saw there that the color scheme in the battle square was changed to a blue attack. Um, the trick being there that you can only dodge the blue attacks by standing still. And we see that our player decided to defeat that dog in battle. So actually not running away from a battle, not showing mercy in a battle, but defeating the opponent. That ensures that this will not be a so-called pacifist run or route. Um, so Sans explains, although very confusingly, the way that the blue attacks work. You have to stand still, not move your heart icon around in order to dodge those. So there's something weird going on here with movement and stillness. Um, the snowman cannot move, and he asks to have you take a piece of him and bring it with you on your travels. The snowmen uh, appear in EarthBound, not in the wintry world, kind of strangely actually, but only in the world of the main character's mind, Ness's mind in Magicant. There is some really strange funny but sort of profound dialogue that you get if you talk to the snowmen in Ness's mind. Um, so they seem to be doing a bit of a reference to that here. All right. So we've got to make it through an electric maze. I'm going to check and see. All right, just in case. There's not usually much going on in the chat, but you just never know. All right. So I think we get the point here. There is a path through the electric maze that Papyrus sketches out for us. All right, try now. It was too easy. Ah, the salesman with his cart. The frozen treat that warms your heart. Um, there's a whole bit there with making the snowball bigger. Want some fried snow? Hmm. No, doesn't have any. So the magic tart salesman in EarthBound has a cart just like that one, and she has seemingly given up on it when we first encounter her. So doing a little golfing here. Come on. Awesome. We have a delicious victory. You are awarded 1G. Nice. Snowdecahedron. Ah, some more puzzle bits. Just gonna skip along here. Spaghetti is a trap. It will keep you from progressing. uh, all right. But then when you check on the spaghetti, it's frozen. It's impossible to eat because it's stuck to the table. So again, there's something real weird going on with movement. The settings on the microwave all say spaghetti. There is a little hole there for the mice, but can't encounter. All right. Clearing the switch. And now the dogs are going to come and check. Um, Again, Mother 3 has a very similar bit that involves the protagonist smelling like a human, but this battle involves two different enemies who seem to function as one. Oh, it's really sad actually, right? The dog is so sad, but according to Flowey, at least that's how we make our love increase. The LV standing for love, according to that flower. That's awesome. All right, so very much like Toriel, Papyrus has all these puzzles, but then pretty quickly becomes more of a friend than a foe. Um, some of the setup of this is pretty reminiscent of the Brick Road section in EarthBound. Brick Road, of course, becomes Dungeon Man later in the game. when he gets some help from Dr. Ann Donuts. Uh, Again, not a direct reference because Papyrus, of course, is his own character. But there is that Dr. Alphys mentioned there. So yet another one of our cast of characters we hear about first from Papyrus, who is obsessed with status. Um, so doesn't want to become a dungeon the way Dungeon Man does, Brick Road does in EarthBound, but so obviously wants approval and even friendship from some of these other characters. Um, and that's got to be the main difference, really, as I see it, between Undertale and EarthBound, for all their similarities, is the way that our main character is really alone throughout Undertale. Although we encounter lots of other folks along the way, there's no one who joins the party. Um, in EarthBound, the friends and party members are an important part of the game. This puzzle is entirely random. Let's see how it lands. Sorry for the flashing lights. Oh, jeez. Can't believe it would just produce that. All right. Dog wants the snow to turn into art. All right. Probably doesn't help this. All right. So the artist who doesn't finish his work. Some meditations here on puzzles, games, friendship, and art. Um, so one of your classic slide across the tiles puzzles. Nailed it. All right. And on to the next. So Sans has a weird little area here. There's some eyes looking. Oh, how did he do that? He kind of teleports across. All right. And there's this cave, which for now is just going to have to remain mysterious. A door with the Undertale symbol on it. You can change the lighting by touching the mushrooms. Doesn't do anything. All right. We'll just skip ahead a bit more here. And I will check the chat. All right. Okay. Onward to the great big dog that blocks the way. So Toby Fox really likes these little white dogs. He performed a live version of some of his music, and instead of a conductor, there was just a little white dog plush up on stage. It's sort of Toby's alter ego, it seems. All right. All right, there's all these traps, but they aren't activated. What's going on? He doesn't want to actually defeat the human, so he's not going to use this one. His puzzles are very fair, his traps are expertly cooked, This method is too direct, no class at all, away it goes. So a nod there to this idea of games having just the right amount of difficulty. Um, and in this case, the enemy, the monster, taking sympathy on the human. Again, a reminder about blue attacks. But at this point, we've arrived at Snowden Town. The idea of a town covered in snow, again, seems to be a direct reference to EarthBound with the town of Winters, although there isn't really much to do there other than a boarding school where one of our characters comes from. Instead, Snowdin is really the first town that we see in Undertale, and it has all the things that you'd expect an RPG town to have. As she mentions, there's an inn, there's stores, and there's some characters, like those two brothers. Just like in battle, you can do a number of different things in Undertale. There are options here to talk to the storekeeper or to buy items. So this is one way in which you can fill out some more of Undertale's world, getting a kind of retelling of the basic plot from the perspective of some of these characters. So unless you're a ghost or can burrow under the door, forget about it. We have been in a place where most monsters have not been able to go themselves. But they have hope that one day they will get out from the underworld. So it's almost a bit like the battle screen, only there you don't have the option to fight the shopkeeper, which you do get to do in some games. And famously, if you do it, if you choose to do it, you're marked for the rest of the game. All right, so here's the inn. You can choose to stay. Pretty cute. There is an igloo. There is a library. Oh, and it looks kind of like a Christmas tree. That's interesting. Grillby's restaurant. And they tell you about some other parts of the underworld. And each of these characters seems very much individualized, um, as if each of them has their own story. Even the Rock has a little fancy mustache. Notice they say it feels unsafe today. Uh, that's because this player has actually defeated some of the monsters that they faced in combat. You could actually meet and get some different dialogue if you make it to this point in the game without defeating anyone in battle. Um, yep, the library. We know the sign is misspelled. Classic inclusion in a video game, whether it's an RPG or a Zelda type of game. You got to have your library for your world building and to get an interesting take on the performance of studying and learning because after all, adults love to see kids enjoying themselves when they read and learn. Um, so pretty interesting stuff here. Monsters turn into dust when they get old and kick the bucket. Monsters are made of magic, but humans have physical forms and are stronger. They lack magic. Bullet pattern birthday card. Monsters' bodies are attuned to their soul. The more their attacks will hurt us. So they're a little bit scared of humans because of their physical strength and because of their determination. All right. Love, hope, compassion. This is what people say monster souls are made of. But the absolute nature of soul is unknown. After all, humans have proven their souls don't need these things to exist. There's a reversal um, between what we think of as monsters and what we think of as humans. This, I think, is very, very in line with some of Tolkien's concerns. But again, we're not talking about Tolkien today. We're just talking about EarthBound. So I think we'll just leave it at this point. We made it to Snowdin. We're about to meet a new foe. As the screen snows over, we'll pause it there. I know it says it's 11 hours long, but we're not going to watch this whole thing, so don't worry too much. Um, yeah, we're a good way into the game. I think if there's no questions, comments right now, I will let you all go with that. Just a reminder, we have a lot more going on at Signum Academy. If you are interested in getting involved in the discussion, and Twitch is not really your thing, but you'd kind of prefer some face-to-face interaction, so to speak, got quite the stack of fun books there. There are reading clubs, that is, reading a book together and discussing it, writing clubs, and conversation and translation clubs to learn about languages. So if you're into creative writing, if you're trying to work on a language, or if you might want to discuss a great book with some new friends, check out the Signum Academy clubs. Um, this, of course, remains free and occasional. Signum Academy on Twitch. I'll see y'all in a couple of weeks for more Undertale. Where do I click?